and Councillor McDonald will be chairing today's hui. Okay. So, te me tūtahi, kei te mihi kia koutou, kua tai mai nei I tēnei hui, I hui, te mihi mai ana kia tātou, ka timata kia mātou hui mo te karakia. He hono rehe kruore ki te atua he maunganonga ki te whenua he whakaro pahinga tangata katoa. E hangi e tātua e ngā kau hau ki roto ki tēnā o mātou, whakatūngi e tō wairua tapu. He āwhina he tuhu I o mātou, he ako hoki I ngā kupu I roto I tēnei mahi o tātou awa, o kai tuna, tōnu atu, ake, amene. Ake ara tātou. Ai ka huri I te rākau ki a koe e hoa, e matu mōna. Kia rara. Your speaker.
So, aroha mai, to turn my mute button off. Kia ora, Dean, kia koutou, ka nui te mihi kia koe, kia koutou, nau mahara mai ki tēnei huihuinga mō te maru o Kaituna. I'm going to jump straight into the agenda and ask for apologies, please.
Madam Chair, e mihi ana kia koutou. Madam Chair, I will need to leave about 10 to 12, unfortunately. So just to put that for note.
Kia ora.
I also need to leave at 10 to 12. Thank you.
Kia ora, Councillor McDonald. We've also received apologies from Councillor Scrimgeour, Vincent Brown, Tanya Tapsell, Jeff Rice and Nikki Douglas.
Kia ora. Can I have a mover for those apologies, please?
I'll move.
Thank you.
Second.
Second, thank you. Carried. I'm just going to follow our agenda this morning. Our next item on any acceptance of late items.
Madam Chair, may I ask a question? As the informal member, what are my rights? I just want to make that clear. Do I have voting rights in this particular space, or I don't?
I'll just see. Can I just see some clarification from you, Dean, on that? My understanding is not, but I'll just have some clarification from you as well.
Yeah, that's correct.
Ka pai.
That doesn't mean that you can't have a cordial day, brother.
Kia ora. I don't like just sitting here saying nothing.
Kia ora there, Councillor White. You do have voting rights, but as an informal member, you do not count towards the quorum, so you can vote.
Oh, well, that's good to know. Thank you.
Sorry, I was having trouble with my mute button.
I did see it on the minutes here, or on the documents that I did, but I wasn't sure because I'd heard otherwise. But now that you've clarified it, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, and thank you for that clarification as well. So we don't appear to have any late items for the agenda. Next, do we have any declarations of conflicts of interest?
I guess, aroha mai, I would just probably raise that currently I'm a staff member. Prior to my coming on board with the Regional Council a couple of years ago, I was a member of Te Maru o Kaituna on behalf of Ngāti Rangiwewahi. Yeah, thought I'd just let pass that on.
Thank you, Gina.
As a representative on that board.
Thank you. Okay, there be no further declarations. I will move to the previous minutes and ask for any matters arising from those minutes, please.
So, Madam Chair, as you're aware, the I may, the release of the national policy statement from Cabinet was made, and obviously has a significant role to play in the journey to Maru Kaituna. So I'm assuming there'll be an update today. Aroha Mai haven't quite gone through everything, but that's a pretty important document. Is that that's on the agenda, I assume?
We do have some presentations, Councillor White, quite a few presentations that are being presented this morning. There's also, so I'm going to make an assumption that there will be coverage in those reports as well. There being no other matters arising, I'm going to ask for a mover of those minutes, please. Thank you, Dean. Moving, thank you, Nick. I saw your hand. Thanks very much. Take those as being moved and seconded and carried. Thank you. Our next agenda item is the chairperson's report. Given I'm just a stand-in for today, I'm going to hand the rako back to you, Dean, to give that report. Kia koe.
Tēnā koutou. First of all, I suppose I'm looking for the silver lining during the last 7 weeks, and I think there's plenty here. I think the environment naturally around the world has benefited without the interruption of human beings, and so I think I'd like to concentrate on a few things that I feel have happened that are worth celebrating during that period. And I'd like to start with the Te Arawa Cultural Values Framework, the Environmental Plan, Te Tuapapa, which was the award winner for the non-statutory planning for the New Zealand Planning Institute Awards. So that's our lakes, so that's fantastic. Also, the National Award for the Kaituna Rediversion Project, recognised for innovation and creative excellence, and also got the Project Award through the NZPI. So fantastic, everybody, and just kei te mihi ki a koe tau for your diligence and just keeping on with that project. It's delivered huge on behalf of not only the councils, but also iwi, and it's been a big one. So I just want to make note of that. And then I suppose just recently, yesterday, with central government's decision on the actions around healthy waterways, that package is a big one too, as well as how that plays out. I heard something on the way to here this morning on the radio that it was a one-off payment, a one-off generational payment. Probably never happen again. But let's make the most of those sorts of things. And you may have more insight into that. But with also the, I just want to also make mention of the collective approach for Te Arawa through the Tū Mauri Tū Ora Te Arawa approach to projects which included the Kaituna. I think, sorry, there were other areas as well. There's the lakes, the catfish killers, and the pest control management around, I think, Tarawera. So another example of when we all come together and make that pitch, we can succeed in a number of things. So that's really all I wanted to report on today on behalf of Te Maru. We are in there. I think our action plan came at the right time. We have objectives which we are hoping, and they're reasonable, they're achievable, and we have budget. So that will help the government determine, I'm hoping, so some of those projects. So that's about all for me at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. I'd like to reiterate the thanks to those staff, Pim, you and your team, and the work done by Te Aroa to get a bid in for the funding that the Crown has made available to progress the work that Te Maru has been doing since its establishment. So I think it's great progress, and let's keep our fingers crossed that we become one of the lucky ones to garner some of that funding so that we can expedite our action plan sooner than later. So thanks everybody for all your hard work. Moving on from Dean's report. Can I have a mover for Dean's report, please, and a seconder before moving on? If I raise, I'm having a bit of difficulty seeing the hands going. Okay, I've seen David's hand go up, so I'll take David as a mover. And unless I bring everybody's, can I have a seconder, please?
You gave a thumbs up.
Thumbs up. I've got Te Tari there. Thank you very much.
And seconding that, Madam Chair, can I just say that that Dean's comment around collective action is key. You know, when we work together, we can achieve many things, and our people know that. So that's a challenge for us to continue to do that in this COVID and recovery going out, Dean, that actually the essence of working together is strong and powerful, and I just want to reinforce that.
Thank you. So Amanda, Amanda, did we get our mover and seconder there?
Yes, Councillor McDonald. I've also sent you through a run sheet to assist with your last minute chairing of the meeting.
Thank you. So I'm gonna, all those in favour say aye or hands up, and what I can see, I'm going to take that as carried. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move in now to the Kaituna Action Plan, which is another verbal update, and I'm assuming this is around the table exercise. Now I'm going to, we have apologies at the table today. Maybe I can start with the respective councillors of the respective councils. Do we have representation from all the councils today? TCC, Western Bay, Rotorua Lakes Trust. Amanda, can you help me with that? Do we have representation from those?
Yes,
councils?
we sure do. We've got Councillor Heidi Hughes, we've got Nick Chater, we have, who else have we got? Councillor Daly and ourselves.
Okay, so maybe if I start with TCC, you Heidi, if you would like to, if you have anything to update from TCC.
No updates from TCC for this meeting. We've been deep in the annual plan process, and it's so I haven't nothing to report. I think so.
Thanks, Heidi. I don't know if anybody else was having problems, but it was a bit difficult hearing you, Heidi. Okay, I'm going to just check with Amanda. Amanda, were you able to hear Heidi?
No, that was quite hard to hear, but I see her putting her headset on, so that should help.
Okay, I'm just mindful because you're taking the minutes, and I guess
Thank
it's crucial
you.
that you're
Hi, is that better?
hearing the kōrero.
That's much better, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry that yes, we have nothing to report from TCC for this meeting.
Thank you. Can we move on to the Western Bay Plenty District Council, please?
Western Bay has been working through. Can you hear me all right?
Thank you very much.
Western Bay Plenty has been working through quite a comprehensive program in its long-term plan lead up. Obviously, our annual plan has been concluded. There were no significant changes in the environmental space, I don't think, but Peter Watson's listening in, he'll probably correct me, but certainly the long-term plan, we've been developing our environmental strategy, and part of that is to support for multi-agency programs where council is a partner agency, and in particular implementation of the Kaituna River Action Plan and actions linked to the Tauranga Moana Harbour program. So, you know, I think we're cognizant of the need to up our game in the environment space, and we've got councillors on board with that. I think that's about all for this.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Rotorua Lakes Trust. Do we have a councillor present from the Rotorua Lakes Trust?
We've got apology from Tanya Tapsell, who is the representative, so no.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, and who is giving the update from Bay of Plenty Regional Council? Is that you, Pim?
I'm happy to do so, Councillor McDonald, unless Councillor Nees or Councillor White wish to.
Oh, yours, Pim.
Okay, thank you. So in terms of the Bay of Plenty Regional Council's work on the action plan, what we have done so far is work with Te Arawa Lakes Trust in partnership to develop the green projects bid, which would include substantial funding to accelerate the implementation of the action plan. And I believe there's space on the agenda for us to talk a little bit more about that later on. We also have some provision in our existing budgets for work on the actions that the Regional Council has been tasked with in the action plan. So, for example, one of the actions in the action plan refers to quantitative limits to contaminant discharges and abstractions. Now, that is the core business of Council in its implementation of the NPS for freshwater. And as Councillor White referred to earlier, the latest iteration of that, called Essential Freshwater, was released by MFE yesterday, and it's very early days. We're all only seeing it in its final form for the first time, so I think it's too early to say exactly what the implications are for Te Maru, but we have a number of staff working on summarising that and getting our heads around what has made it through the consultation process and is in the final proposal. In terms of operations that are already underway to achieve the action plan, I have an operations report on the agenda, and I'll show a couple of videos to add to what's in that paper to show you the work on the ground that's been undertaken in recent months towards the actions in the action plan. Is that sufficient, Councillor McDonald?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. That's great. Thank you, Pam.
Can I add, Councillor McDonald?
Absolutely.
Just in the context of the NPS FM, I suppose the exciting thing from an iwi perspective, if you can call it that, is the fact that the position of iwi in that whole process and the engagement with iwi has been elevated. So I guess elevated to the context of partnerships, and so there's quite a bit of work, I would think, moving forward around what that actually means and how that's expressed in the actual action and implementation on the ground. So that's encouraging. It really was highlighted in the NPS. So Pim, just to add to your comments, I think that was another aspect that was very profound in many respects in terms of the potential for the Maru Kaituna action plan.
Kia ora te taru. I also, the iwi members that are present, can we hear from those iwi representatives around the table as well, please? So because I can see you, I'm going to start. No, sorry, I can't see. You might have to help me out here.
I can see Picky.
Picky, you can see Picky. Okay, okay. For the iwi members, can you just I'm just giving the opportunity for you to contribute to this kōrero too. So if you can just follow one another. And let's start with you, Piki.
Morena tātou, mate mona tēnā koe, nau rei wā tātou nei hui e whakahaere I tēnei ata, nō reira tēnei ka mea ke kia koe o tira kia tātou I tēnei wā. Thanks for the opportunity and apologies that I dialed in late. I've, like everyone, even though we're supposed to be locked down, I haven't been so busy in all my life and sitting in front of a screen and juggling a whole lot of balls, but this is certainly a time that has challenged us as a people, but I'm glad that we're able to revert to our technology to make sure that we can ensure that our kōrero is consistent. Look, one of the things from an iwi perspective, and Taruo might have been raised earlier, is around the new regulations that have come into play over our way with regard to our lakes, and it's been a watershed day for us. In being able to protect our taonga species in our moana, in our lakes, and at the same time we've been following intensively the massive work that our catfish killers have been doing over here and engaging our tamariki at Kura and Kohanga Reo and the wider community to make sure we get rid of them catfish that are infiltrated our moana. So on that space, it's been good that our Te Aroha Lakes Trust has been at the forefront and continuing that massive work to make sure that our environment, that our moana and our lakes at the top end of the river is well looked after. Just generally in the context of the lockdown, I think it's been absolutely fantastic for our environment. We've been starting to see flora and fauna that we haven't seen for a long time. I've seen the reports that have come across from Tauranga Moana where they've been seeing fish and stocks and species that have never been seen so close to the wharves and to the shores in a long time. So it's almost like I wish we'd have a lockdown every year for 4 weeks, and then we need Mother Nature to revive herself. But apart from that, those are, I guess, the two big things that we've been involved with from in relation to our waterways, and particularly to the top end, the Okere, and then onto the Kaituna River.
Thank you, Piki. Can we move to, I can see you, Rawiri, so can we move to Rawiri?
No, I just endorse what Piki's just said. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Kia ora.
Excuse me, Councillor McDonald, I believe Councillor Hughes has another comment to make.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just also wanted to add that at yesterday's annual plan deliberations, we managed to put in a sustainability framework. We wanted to get that underway by our long-term plan process for Tauranga City Council. So as part of that, it would be an independent advisory group that will be working with our council, so that we'll have iwi representation and we'll have hopefully some really good connection between our council and the community in order to move things forward. So that was a really good result. I just wanted to add that in today. I think that's going to feed into our work here really well.
Thanks, Heidi.
Madam Chair, sorry, just add to what just a conversation around what Piki raised around the impacts of COVID, and the comeback of the environment is quite obvious to many in terms of reduction of carbon and everything else, carbon emissions. So is there, can I ask of the Regional Council, I suppose I should know this, but the work, is there any work being done, comprehensive work being done on the effects of closure of COVID on environmental impacts across the region?
I'm going to ask you, Pim, to respond if you can.
Thank you, Councillor McDonald and Councillor White. So unfortunately, some of our environmental monitoring was also suspended during lockdown because those operations were considered non-essential, except for the monitoring that was associated with human water supplies. So we will have some information that comes back from the water sampling that was done on human water supplies, and all of the remote monitoring, such as the air quality monitoring, did continue throughout the period. So we will be able to see, for example, what a difference it's made in terms of PM 2.5 or PM 10 dust particles in the atmosphere in those parts of our region where air quality is an issue and being monitored. I think also I agree with you that the anecdotal evidence from fisheries is that a lot of people are saying that they have been catching more fish than they would have expected when they've been allowed back out to catch fish subsequent to the lockdown. So whether that's because commercial fishing was reduced, or whether it was simply because of a reduction in the recreational activity, I don't know. So we have some data, but we didn't go out and specifically collect a whole lot of information on, for example, bird presence or abundance or things like that, because our operations were stood down during that period like everybody else's.
Thanks, Pam. Have we got any other iwi members around the table?
Maybe I'll have a go. I suppose one of the highlights, I think, is, and I think Pim may have it in his operational, or part of, in his operational report, but over that period, or prior to COVID-19, with the Te Pou Repo wetland, there's an area up in there, Te Tumukawa, which is a partnership between Tapuika and Ngāti Whakauē, and involves regional council as well as a partner in that project. And through Courtney, who organised the development of that wetland. So basically that was the Pamet Block Farm, and it's been converted now into a wetland to be joined on to the rest of the wetland down there. So that was a huge achievement over the period, and it's looking fantastic. And I think Pim may have some photos to share later on in the project, but that was probably a good one. I think just kind of swapping a little bit back to Maru, some of the projects that the Maru decided to lead, one that I was responsible for was Project 10, which is basically the Kaituna community connection, connecting with the community at various things. So whenever the community's having a meeting, and that, it was an opportunity for me to rock along and give the spiel and promote the Te Tini Atuna, our action plan. Over the period, there weren't many invites to go to any meetings, but however, that still is open, and I see Matt Layton. I think the Tangata Whenua Forum may be having a meeting coming up at Western Bay. So if that agenda, if Chris or whoever arranges that agenda, I wouldn't mind jumping on to that agenda to give a quick presentation of where we're at. And any other committees, really, any other councils that may, I mean, I'm assuming that the members on here will do that, but if there's a request for us to go to any of the community groups at the Ara River or within the catchment, then I'm happy to attend once we probably get down to level 1 or whatever the rules are going to be. But other than that, I'm happy to attend. So not many meetings happened over the period. The other action in the plan that I'll put my hand up and grant, I think you and I are partners in crime here, was Project 13, which is the Kaituna Cultural and Historical Heritage. So working around what we might do in regards to those particular points for the river. And so over the period, all I've kind of done is gone back and did a bit of a desk review on the previous CIAs and that have been done by various iwi. Ngāti Piki, I did one. And I think this was our Tapu Ika Ngāti Whakaue. So just having a look at what everyone's kind of said in those CIAs. I do think we're at a point now where we could probably start to, rather than a cultural impact assessment, maybe start looking at how we put our histories together. And then so that kind of links into signage and how we promote and those sorts of things. So that's something. And with Grant using the walkways and cycling as an example, so that's something that we're going through at the moment into Puki there, and then going down into Waitangi. There's a bit to work out, but it's how do we connect those walkways to Makatu. So it's around looking at how we might be able to incorporate history interpretation into some of those walkways. So it's still a project at hand. Just another one I spoke to, and I need to get back to Sue Matthews, and Sue and them, her crew at Paingaroa, and they're putting some history interpretation, I think, up around the town there and that sort of thing. So just wanting to work with some of our local communities and that around what the history that they're portraying in their signage and those sorts of things. So that's kind of a little bit that we've been doing at the moment. Yeah, that's me. Thanks.
Thanks, Dean. Thanks, Dean. Have we got anybody else in around the table from the iwi? I think we've had a few apologies this morning, though, haven't we, Dean? So we're probably a bit light in that space. So thank you, everybody, for your report backs to the forum. I just checking the agenda. I've been a bit remiss. I did skip through the update, and I didn't allow for the verbal update regarding the Māori relationships and engagement plan, the draft plan, sorry, around Te Hononga. Do we have, Clark, I know you're sitting in, and Gina.
Me a hau hoki whaia.
Thank you. Morena Ruben. Thank you, Ruben.
Tēnā koutou, tēnā koe, Madam Chair. So I'm just here to give a bit of a quick verbal update about Te Hononga, which is the engagement plan that Council is considering in terms of the engagement for the MPSFM with Māori. At this stage, I'll just give a brief description, very high level, because it's still going through our leadership structure and decision making. But we'll get a clearer picture in the next couple of weeks. But having said that, at a higher level, it encompasses a partnership approach with a range of engagement options to start that discussion with iwi, led by iwi, but it directs early discussion with tangata whenua to determine the most appropriate way to engage, noting that we have statutory requirements to notify by certain dates. At this stage, it looks like 2024, given yesterday's updates. And it also enables an enhanced input through the policy implementation process. But having said that, we're still working on it. It's a work in progress and has yet to go through the proper leadership structure for approval and review. However, we did have a very productive meeting workshop with our Komiti Māori councillors yesterday, and they provided us with clear direction and great and some welcome support in terms of the hard work that needs to go over in the next 4 to 5 years.
Thank you, Ruben. Just to the members, if this is in its very infant stages at the moment, and it is as a result of directives that have come from central government around the freshwater space and the provisions that regional council have to make for Māori in that space. So as Ruben said, we did have our first workshop yesterday to look at options that staff had put before us, but it's going to be an intensive piece of work, and we will have staff keep Te Maru updated around the progress of that, as I believe that a lot of you, the iwi members, you will be participating in that piece of work. I'm sure you will be. Thank you, Ruben. Before I move though, are there any questions from the forum to Ruben?
More of a comment, Madam Chair. I note, and understandably within the Te Maru o Kaituna, you know, Mātauranga Māori features very strongly in this and how it's applied, and maybe there's one of the members might be able to, one of the staff might be able to make a brief comment on Mātauranga Māori inclusion in the release yesterday.
We do have Gina. Can I ask you to comment, Gina?
Kia ora tātou. Yes, so as we discussed yesterday, there is a very strong component, or the ability to develop that mātauranga response through the MPS freshwater directives, particularly around Te Manawa Te Wai, and if confirmed, the mahinga kai attributes. That's going to be a big focus of particularly my mahi and our team around the wider, to get expression around the wider MPS, of course, but our focus is kaupapa Māori. And I think the link here with Te Kaituna is the action plans that have been developed in the River Plan to develop mātauranga within the outcomes that are desired in that plan. Have been working with Alva Conroy around that, and so I think there's some good linkages there and some good learnings that we could you know, pull out of this piece of this mahi that's been done over the last few years with the Kaituna. And I was just in the middle of writing an email actually to Pim and our science team to try and see what we can do to pull that together and the ability to cross over into these other streams would be really helpful. So kia ora tātou.
Thank you. Thank you, Gina.
Councillor McDonald, you're on mute.
Microsoft.
Oh dear. Aroha mai. Thank you, Gina. Just to follow on from what Gina was saying, and I guess to share the work that's been done in Regional Council. I'm not quite sure how long ago it was that we started to look at Mātauranga Māori and the framework for the application of recognition, acknowledgement and application of Mātauranga Māori through a framework that's been developed really has set a guideline for really what's coming out of central government in that whole freshwater space. So we've been quite fortunate that we were able to get this out of the box some time ago, albeit it's still work in progress. But it gives us some of those building blocks that central government are now directing councils to follow in their freshwater space. And the other thing I want to also note too is the advocacy of Te Maru to ensure that Mātauranga Māori is applied across the board in the action plans that have come out of Te Maru o Kaituna. So, you know, it's I think it's been valuable across the board, and particularly for our co-governance entities, and also really with our hapu iwi who have been developing hapu iwi management plans too, have also introduced Mātauranga Māori as a baseline at looking how they want things addressed moving forward. So it is an exciting time, it's a challenging time, and there's a lot of work for us to be doing, not just in councils, but amongst Te Iwi Māori as well. But I think it's an exciting challenge, and I'm sure that working together and our collaborative approach will help us achieve what we want to achieve moving forward. So kia ora for that. So I'm going to thank you for that update, Ruben. just following on now, what I'm going to do is actually move straight into the presentations. I'm going to leave the reports until after the presentations. I'm mindful that people during the presentations may have to exit the meeting. So if we can start with the presentations now, and the first one on the agenda are the Green Projects bid on behalf of Te Maru o Kaituna by Te Arawa. I probably need some direction from you, Dean, as to who, or you, Amanda, as to who was doing this presentation.
Councillor McDonald, if I could step in. Nikki has texted me to say that she's still at the doctor and she would prefer not to have to come if she didn't have to. And she has asked me if I can cover for her in the corridor on this. I'm happy for somebody else to do so if they're familiar with the proposal, but otherwise I'm happy to give an update and share the screen with the proposal if that's what you'd like me to do.
Just before you do that, just probably a bit of an introduction to that, because during lockdown, a proposal to put some proposal to put a collective approach to the Minister, I think it was Eugene Sage, Minister for Conservation. So this is the Te Arawa wide one. Nikki and others, we jumped on the phone, had a conversation. Pim was involved. We also had Alva involved as well. And we decided that a collective approach in regards to a proposal would be best. So I kind of touched on it in my brief, but so that was So we had the Tarawera catchment, the Te Arawa Lakes Biosecurity Program, Te Maru o Kaituna Action Plan, which is more what we're talking about here, but also the Wetlands Restoration Program, and that's Mai Makatu ki Tongariro, and the Rotorua Catchment Stream Restoration Program. So the letter went to the Crown saying, look, we're looking at projects which kind of run about $31 million worth over a 5-year period, with about 7.5 million sought in year one. We were looking at employment of up to 10 FTEs and 20 additional in the first year. So we're looking at really, creating employment opportunity around the proposal. And then, so once we got that agreement from the various groups to go forward with this, we all signed off on behalf of the respective groups that we represented. And then the detail, and that went down to Pim and his team. So I'll hand back to you, Pim, if you want to update on where we are from there. Cheers.
Thank you. I would have said Chair Flavel, but I think we're allowed to say Dean. I'm not sure. So the time frame on some of these central government funding processes has been quite rapid during lockdown, and there have now been 5 of these processes that regional council staff have been involved in, and typically the requirements will be released and then 2 days later they'll expect some form of submission. So we've been through a couple of iterations of that sort of process. Now, the proposal that's been put forward by Te Arawa Lakes Trust and a number of partners is, I'm going to share it on my screen if I can, so that you can all see it. Where is it? Here it is. So if you could let me know if that's showing up on your screen, members. Give me the thumbs up if you can see that. Yes? Okay, so the proposal is called Mauri Tu Mauri Ora Te Arawa E, and it captures a huge range of initiatives, some of which have council partners, some of which have other partners. So I think Nikki was going to give you an overview of it, as Dean has done, and then focus in particular on the on the bid for funds to assist with implementation of Te Maru o Kaituna River Authority's action plan. So I'll sort of scroll through this so that you can see the gist of it. And I think Nikki has shared this document with all of you members by email, so you've hopefully had a chance to have a look at it. But I wanted to stop on the slide where all the partners are shown. So these are the partner agencies or entities that have been involved with development of the proposal. So you can see it's certainly a collective effort rather than something that Te Arawa Lakes Trust has driven on their own. And so you'll see, members of the Rotorua Lakes Council, Bay of Plenty Regional Council, hopefully Western Bay of Plenty District Council is in here somewhere, but all of the tribal members of Te Arawa should be included in the partner membership of that proposal. This part of the bid talks about the actual projects that have been sought. So this was the template that was provided by central government for regional sector enhancement projects or green projects. And there are a number, this is a 12-page proposal and we're on page 4 here, so I'll be relatively brief. But the idea behind this project, Wetlands Restoration Rotorua Lakes Tongariro ki Maketu, was for Te Arawa to establish its own operational team that would work on wetland restoration projects all the way from the centre of the North Island to the coast, particularly on Māori land, but not necessarily so. And that would potentially partner up with existing regional council programs that are run both by the Waikato and the Bay of Plenty regional councils and the territorial local authorities within that rohe. So as you can see, there's substantial funding involved. That's the total cost, 2.7 million, and then a breakdown year 1, year 2, year 3, etc., etc. Now for each project, we were asked to supply, and Te Arawa Lakes was asked to supply a number of other bits of information. So how quickly could the project be started? Because one of central government's key themes through all of this is create jobs and do so at pace. They really want to see those people who have been affected by businesses that have had to downsize or have gone under as a result of the COVID response, being given an opportunity to work elsewhere as soon as possible to minimise the overall impact on people's livelihoods in New Zealand. We were asked to identify constraints, and so landowner approval and some consents for use of toxins and machinery. Now this links to that Ministry for the Environment initiative where they've said they want to provide a fast track option for resource consenting in some situations. So they wanted people to list here whether or not consents were likely to be required, and if there were, how could the Ministry for the Environment help bidding entities to streamline that process so it wasn't held up for a year or so if it was a good idea. We were asked to identify employment totals, so how many FTE would potentially be created through the project. And then there were the environmental benefits, social and economic, community well-being, and the last column is around partnerships. So what I thought I'd do is I'll go through to the next one now. Aquatic pests expansion, weeds and catfish. I think you're all familiar with that successful program, and this idea is that Te Arawa would be actively involved in some of the other biosecurity operations to protect the lakes from aquatic pests and weeds, including things like staffing boat ramps and running campaigns, etc., to manage incursions and in the control operations themselves. The next item is obviously key for this organisation, Te Maru o Kaituna Action Plan. This version, you can see I've only got a draft version on my screen. There are figures in here for years 4 and 5 now that weren't included in this draft. But what we've sought is a fund that central government could provide either through Te Arawa Lakes Trust or through some of the other partners in Te Marua Kaituna River Authority to provide funding to speed up or start implementing those actions in the action plan that don't currently have agency or iwi funding available for them. So it's quite exciting. It's a great time for the authority because a number of the 18 projects in your action plan are still unfunded. So if central government did come through with, for example, 5 million or 6 million over the space of the next 5 years, that would allow all of us to make huge progress towards achievement of those objectives. So I could go into more detail, but I wanted to highlight that funding will first and foremost be directed to the 4 projects led by Te Marua Kaituna River Authority, so the ones that don't have an agency or an iwi lead, and thereafter to projects led by individual agency or iwi members. So the ones that you as a collective have agreed to take the lead on, they would be at the top of the queue for funding and therefore implementation through this. And then the funding would be available to support and implement the actions that have been identified to be led by, say, Toi Moana or Western Bay of Plenty District Council or Rotorua Lakes Council or Tauranga City Council or the iwi. So those 4 projects, just to remind you, are the Pataka Kai project, the River Restoration and Enhancement Fund, the Kaituna Community Connection, and the Monitoring Water Takes and Discharges project. Before I go on to what else is in the proposal, do any members have any questions, feedback or suggestions on this particular item? I guess we've all got our fingers crossed, but any particular questions or feedback on this?
I've just got a question, Pim. And do we have any idea of when we can expect to have a response from central government? Of the moment.
Councillor Nees may be connected, but it's definitely above my pay grade, Madam Chair. So, yeah.
No, sorry, I've got no advices of that. We're just waiting.
Madam Chair, if I can make a comment, just to put some of this in perspective, really, you made the comment, Pim, at the start that everything was done at pace, and absolutely, because this was pulled together during COVID. And Dean, you mentioned sign off, and I would expect obviously that the co-governance entities, Te Arawa Lakes Trust and Te Marua Kaituna would have been primary signatories in this, because you would have seen all the entities that were there as supporting for Te Arawa COVID. Now the Te Arawa COVID was actually a bigger play around dealing with the now, and so getting Kai on the table and Picky Thomas and his group were out there putting Kai on the table, and it all came under eventually in terms of coordination under the Te Arawa COVID, hence all of those entities. But quite a lot of those entities would not be aware of this particular program. I'm not saying they wouldn't be supportive, I'm just saying they would not be aware. So just to be mindful that the signatories to this are clearly a couple or several entities, whoever they were, but I'm sure it's Te Marua Kaituna and Te Arawa Lakes Trust. And so I applaud the application, but I'm just trying to recognise the fact that it was done at pace, in case people say, well, hell, we're up there on the brand supporting this, but we don't know much about it, because of quite a lot of that, about 16 or 20 odd entities you got there, a number of them wouldn't know. So I think it's just to put that caution in the presentation. And like I said, I applaud and certainly support it, but just to make that note, really.
Thank you, Councillor White. And I think what we're all hoping is that central government doesn't just say, okay, here's the money, but that they would ask us to work with them on a contract for funding that had a more detailed business plan and identified milestones and persons responsible for each one and so on and so forth. So we're expecting that to happen, but who knows?
And as I might have mentioned yesterday, Pim, when things are done at pace, one of the key issues that we've got to recognise is building the capacity to deliver to whatever projects are funded. And so, so this pulled in overnight in a short space of time, and then making sure that we can obviously deliver the capacity to actually exercise this. And likewise, as I mentioned, in terms of the employment and procurement of opportunities for iwi Māori in this particular space. Being able to upskill to ensure that our people are near the front line of employment opportunities is important. At a time like COVID, there have been many unemployed people and a lot of competition for jobs. I just do not want our iwi members to be missing out in that space. Just a comment.
Madam Chair, Piki here. Can I just support in relation to Taru's kōrero on it, and thanks for that. One of the more clunky things that we deal with Te Pūmautanga o Te Arawa is that our meeting date is exactly the same time and day of Te Maru o Kaituna. So in the context of that, the stuff that I share with them doesn't come to them for at least a month later, because it would be inappropriate for me to start sharing our board pack or the relevant part of our board pack with TPT before the members of Te Maru o Kaituna has seen and approved and discussed them. So there's just a little bit of a lag there in taking on Taru's point, is that yes, we do need to get it under the nose of the signatories to that document, and just a little bit of a time lag from the timing from our two entities, that's all.
Thanks, Piki.
Any other feedback from members at this point? I acknowledge those points, and yeah, so this this proposal has been led by your colleague Nikki Douglas, as in her role through Te Arawa Lakes Trust and in her membership on this board through Ngāti Rangi Wewahi. I'm sort of filling in for her at this time, but I acknowledge that, yeah, but all of those things you've said are true. Madam Chair, would you like me to continue through the proposal with the other projects, or was this the one that you were particularly interested in? And just to know that there will probably be a conversation with central government at some point soon if they like this idea.
Okay. Well, I am mindful, Pim, that there are other presentations. How much longer would you need if you had to go a bit further into the report?
I guess I'd be happy to finish now, and you've all got this report, this proposal in your inboxes. If members wanted to spend some time with me on the phone talking about any of the other projects, I'd be happy to, and I'm sure Nikki would as well. But I'm fine to wind it up right here. Okay,
thank you, Pam. Thank you, Pam. Just also on the comments that were made by Te Taru and Piki, those were also concerns by the Māori constituent councillors around the haste that this had to be done, and of the obvious lack of communication out to our hapu iwi on the ground. So, you know, we're cognizant that there are recurrent concerns in the hapu iwi space of this work having to have been done in haste, and there are some iwi that have been very concerned at this. I guess for Te Maru and Tolt, you know, they were fortunate that Te Maru o Kaituna was at that point where the action plan had been developed and was able to be used in applying for the funds that the government was made available. Obviously, it wasn't the same or as strong across the whole region, but definitely in going out with the Te Maru o Kaituna communications that Dean has alluded to that will be happening over the next few months. This is probably some of the kōrero that we need to touch base with the hapu iwi around why this action was taken very quickly. And let's hope that the fruits of what come out of it, we will be forgiven for some of the concerns that have been raised. So thanks for raising those concerns. Okay, what I want to do now is move on to the next presentation. Sorry, so I'm operating with my phone with my agenda so that I can use my tablet. Okay, the next agenda presentation is around 83 Ford Road, a concept plan for our Western Bay Plenty District Council. So who is presenting that from Western Bay Plenty District Council this morning?
Monera, Matawana, it's Peter Watson, I'll be doing that.
Thanks, Peter. It's all yours.
I'll just share my screen for shortly, but just there's a few unfamiliar names to me, so I'd just like to do an introduction first, if that's okay. The tēnā koutou katoa ko Mo Te Manga, ko Tauranga Te Moana, ko Peter Watson toko ingoa, ki Tauranga ahu e noho ana. Ko au te kai whakaharere whenua rahu ki te kaunere o te Ahuru, Western Bay Planning District Council. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. So I'm just about to share my screen with you as well. Hopefully it all works well on this technology. Are you seeing, can you see that screen? Yep. All right, so I'll just talk. So the purpose of the update is just to bring to the attention of the Te Marae Kaituna River Authority that some work that Western Bay Planning District Council was undertaking down near the floodgates and the end of the Kaituna there. So just to give context, you'll see in this slide here, there's a big yellow area. So that's the bit of land that's known as 83 Ford Road. This is just a more recent up-to-date photo of the site. You can see the new car park in here, the new boat ramp, protection, bit of activity around marine structures around here, etc. And that's the site where the swap contract is used for the construction of the river diversion. There used to be a house here, but that's subsequently been removed, and that's the wharenui in there. So just by way of background, council purchased land a few years back now. So some of the buildings have been removed. Swap contractors use it for the diversion project, but it's a key strategic access point to the Kaituna and for boaties to get out to fishing and what have you, and to get into the aquatic side of their recreation. So I think Chairman Dean mentioned before that connectivity opportunities up the river towards Te Pourepu o Kaituna and to the TL cycleway, there's real exciting opportunities for connectivity and linking the histories and stuff together as well. But one of the reasons that Council is moving along to doing a concept plan is that we've had a lot of interest from a number of clubs and organisations. For example, the Coast Guard, Makatu Hoi Waka, New Zealand Motor Caravan Association are keen on it for looking at a motorhome site down there. So we've got a lot of interest. So we need to go through this process to manage that going forward. So to achieve that, the process we intend to do is prepare a concept plan that identifies the future use and opportunities for the site. And during that process, we'll consider the following. That's the needs of the organisations who have registered an interest, the connectivity opportunities for walking and cycling, obviously car parking, etc. for boaties who are going out to fishing, security requirements. So we've already got CCTV cameras down there now. I think Pim has some watching the floodgates, that we also have them watching the car park. It was interesting who was going fishing during lockdown level 4 and 3. But yeah, so lighting is another thing we do there. There's some access issues associated with the land adjoining farmer who has to come through there. And obviously the kotahi wharenui, we need to work out what's going to happen with that as well. Going back to the action plan for the Kaituna, and looking at the Powhenua, the Wahara Te Reo signage, history signage, etc. Obviously, when we create a space for recreation, we need to put in amenities. So there's like toilets and what have you. There's boat ramp and the jetties there. Waka ama, they'll need to have some kind of storage, and there's opportunity to share with others in doing that. But they'll need a little place for their boats and the wakas to go as well. The Coast Guard have put in quite a significant proposal at the moment for doing a training base there. And as I said before, freedom camping is a opportunity to have freedom camping down there under our bylaw, and it provides passive surveillance as well. Amenity planting, stormwater management, plantings to make sure that the water is clarified before it's into the rivers and stuff, and investigate the reserve classification for the land. So where to from here? So this is part of our, I guess, pre-engagement with stakeholders and seeking feedback, but we'll do that more formally with the forum later on. So this is just putting it on your agenda. So we'll call for expressions of interest from various groups and organisations to see who's out there and who would like to be involved in the process and how we can accommodate that. So then we'd prepare a draft concept plan that looks at any new buildings or layouts or how the place may operate as a reserve, and that'll go to Western Bay Council in its capacity as landowner to consider and adopt a draft plan. Then we undertake formal engagement with tangata whenua, the wider community. Haven't yet determined all those timeframes yet, but it's likely to be commencing later this year. Once we do that process, get the feedback, we come back to council and adopt a concept plan. We'll keep the Te Marae Kaituna River Authority updated through the process, and we're also looking at doing our Te Puke Makatu Ward Reserve Management Plan review starting later this year, so the concept plan would be incorporated into that. That's the end of the presentation, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Peter. I'll open it up for questions from the forum now.
Kia ora, through the chair. Hey, Peter, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I think I'm always looking at our plan, the Te Maru plan, and there's a number of objectives. Objective 1, which kind of states the traditional and contemporary relationship that iwi and hapu have with the Kaituna River provided for and recognised. So I think there's a lot of potential in what you're saying around the activities that the council are looking at providing in this space. I definitely think iwi should be involved in that, in how that might look in the future. And definitely believe that Te Maru should be involved in having a look at this as well, in the bigger concept of what's happening. And in our objective 2, it talks around iwi-led projects. The Wakarama is something strong. I mean, that group has come to Te Maru specifically and asked around whether they can go back there and that. So, I mean, we're advocating that, I suppose, in that sense, because it aligns to Objective 2 and that. One of the desired outcomes in Objective 2 is a PO or other appropriate markers erected to tell the history and site of various sites along the river. And just up from there is all Taiparia, so a very important site which I think could be marked in some sort of signage or interpretation. So it's good to see that stuff in the in your presentation, Peter. So and I think as far as iwi and hapu, I mean, I think you have the appropriate forum within the council to be able to spread that, but I'm just, I suppose, highlighting Te Maru would also like to be kept up to date with these projects. Yes, thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may just comment to support what Dean has just said. I mean, when you look at the site, and I'm looking at this current slide here, you know, it's a great concept to be able to evolve, you know, space. Obviously, the involvement of Te Maru or Kaituna is really important, given their connection and their duty with respect to the Kaituna itself. But when you look at this wharenui that's here, when you listen to the concept of PO marking history, there is a great opportunity not to be missed to actually create a real core sense of connection here. You know, because my question, when you've got a wharenui, I don't know a heck of a lot about that. If Manu was here, he could give me a real background, I guess, and someone else could. But the mere fact that you have a wharenui there and that level of history and being able to marker it and actually create it as a destination for people, and actually connect with Waka Ama and activities that really, really build around that cultural precinct is really powerful and unique. So it's not just another sort of marina type scenario. It's actually one that's embedded in culture and practices that evolve into modern day sports like Waka Ama that come from a traditional people of Waka, generation. So I'm just putting that on the table, that actually looking at the site, it lends itself. I know as a right from the day of my early childhood back in the 50s and early 60s, I remember going down to the cut with all my family to go and get fish and kahawai and all the things that happened around this space. So, so I think it's really, really important to understand, that there is that really real big opportunity not to be missed. And I just put it on the table in support of what was saying.
Sure.
Peter, I wonder if I could ask, have you, in your other freedom camping sites, have you had any negative environmental impacts as a result of having freedom campers? I'm just thinking this is a very sensitive area, both culturally and very close to the Kaituna River, and wouldn't like to think that something that becomes permitted in this area would have a negative impact both on cultural and environmental values.
Yeah, look, that's certainly part of our, when we look at new sites, this isn't a site on our freedom camping bylaw, that we have a raft of things under the Act that we look at, and it looks at whether putting a freedom camping site in prevents other people from having access and enjoyment of the place, whether there's a health and safety issue associated, like, it's a very remote site and we're asking people to go to places where they can put themselves at danger at night. Also cultural is part of that there, whether there's leases and other arrangements in place. Yeah, there's a whole raft of things we use for that decision. But having said that, you can get, what we found is that where we've prohibited some sites, for example, I thought or Anzac Bay, you then get people go back and they do all the wheelies and stuff like that because there's no passive surveillance here anymore. I'm conscious this is quite a remote site. We do have a few issues with freedom campers down the end, right down the end of the cut where the river goes out to the ocean. That gives us a lot of grief. Currently at the moment, we've got some locals who are regularly dumping their household rubbish down there, for example, because I've just found out apparently the contractor doesn't pick it up from the end of their road. They've cottoned on, if they put it down there, the council will come along and when we empty our rubbish bins, in the public waste, they'll pick it up then anyway. So yeah, so there's a lot of stuff to work through. These are just some ideas. As I say, just this is the context, this is a high level, just saying, here's what's coming down the track. I'm really encouraged to hear the feedback from Dean and Tara about the cultural connection, stuff like that. I'm conscious there's a marae and wharenui and how do we deal with that. It's new to me. I've never dealt with one of these setups on the reserve, but we want to walk alongside tangata whenua and come into a good outcome here.
Peter, are you able to tell us the ownership of that land within the delineated area, the inside there? The where you've got the camper site there, and the adjoining lands. Who owns that land?
So this land to the left is by the adjoining farmer. I think Pim knows him, and then the council owns 83 Ford Road, this block here. I see the milk tanker goes through there, as I understand. So, and there's an access way through here too. So that all those things got to be sorted out. So we'll be talking with an adjoining landowner, the farmer there.
So I'm assuming then where the marae sits, that's Māori land?
No, that's fee simple land that council own.
Okay, so that marae is sitting on council-owned land?
Yes, and I'm not too sure the tikanga and whether it's blessed for me as a marae and all that sort of thing. So that's the stuff we need to find out and have a better understanding of.
Kia ora, if I could, this is Nick from sitting here in the office, and if I could add in there, I know that marae I'm pretty familiar with because it's been part of some of the things we've worked with them. So at the moment, I apologise, I'm spacing Uncle's name who set up the marae, but it was more set up as a family and almost slightly touristy marae. And at the moment, Slim and Karen Penne in there, and Kayla Penn there, their daughter, works for Te Waiaki Pūtea Trust. So we often stay in that little marae with our Te Arawa Journey programs. So as I understand, it's more of a private kind of whānau space, as I understand it. I'm not 100% sure the tikanga around it, but it was more set up as a potential tourism operation as well. So if you need any help in that space, I know Slim and Karen very, very well.
Kia ora, Nick. I think it was
Thank
Uncle
you,
Boyd.
Nick.
That's it.
Ah, all right. Yes.
So
Thank you.
I want to unshare the screen now. So.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter. And I guess just to reiterate some of the comments around keeping in touch with the Te Maru on progress on this, and also including Te Maru, probably by the chair, by Dean, on keeping him abreast of what's happening with this project as you proceed from here.
Good. Excuse me. We'll keep it as a regular action point in our updates to the forum.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Mate Moana. Would I be
yes.
allowed to speak?
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thanks. Just before you move on, I'm also encouraged by the comments around the table about this project, and Dean and the second speaker, I forgot on your name, very supportive of the idea of the potential for this land. As Dean mentioned earlier, I've put my hand up to help lead the Project 13, the Kaituna Cultural and Historical Heritage Project, and I have been socialising the idea with some of my networks about the possibility of using the Whare Nui as a cultural heritage hub, and also fits in well with some of the other projects like Project 12, the Kaituna Cycleway Walkway Project, and even the Project 15 Coastal Park Network Project, I think. And the possibility, I know Dean's got a long-term goal to set up a cultural heritage centre up closer to the TEL and Te Pou Rapo, and but sees that as maybe something that's going to probably take 20 years to achieve. But saying that, it's heartening to see that the CIP project that Pim talked about has got some big money attached to that, and if we can advance some of these 4 projects that this group is leading, then that might come to fruition a bit sooner. But in the short term, I really think that this group should put in a strong proposal for the utilisation of the Whare Nui. I realise it was sort of set up as a backpackers tourism operation by Uncle Boys. In the day, many years ago, I supplied him some equipment for it. So I'm aware of the long history that it had there, but certainly I really believe that the potential as a cycling hub, because we're going to open up the cycleway from the TEL down through the lower Kaituna wetlands to Ford Road, and there'll be a huge number of tourists and cyclists coming through there, and there's a good opportunity to showcase the lower Kaituna and the cultural heritage through a Operation Eyesight sort of thing in that Whare Nui. The Makatu Coast Guard, as Peter said, have put in a very strong bid for the area, and I certainly don't want to do anything at their expense, but I think there's a good option to share this site so that everyone can benefit. But I think the benefits for this group are very strong. So that's all I'd like to say at this stage.
Madam Chair, if I may comment, Councillor Delling, Te Taru here. I'm very supportive of your comments because I think it's a very rich place when you think about how it might be developed. I know Slim and them and Robert Penny used to drive the Kiwi Experience buses as well with backpackers. So I understand probably where some of that came from. But the reality is here that this could be a real strong tourism destination, an authentic tourism destination, actually based not necessarily on international visitors, but domestic visitors. It's got that ring about it, right? And now with tourism being what it is, being able to pivot around attracting our domestic visitors is very strong. And you mentioned cycleways, you mentioned the ability to immerse also in the cultural elements of connection with the Paituna and the Greater Moana, and the Greater Moana is really, really something strong. And I really hope that you, Councillor Daly, and your council really follow that not so much streamline. I think it can happen quite quickly rather than later as we come through as part of the recovery plan and process. So I would encourage you to sort of not look 20 years, but actually in the next 2 or 3 years being able to have this thing up and running and going and an attractive alternative to international tourism.
Thank you, Te Taru. Any further questions or comments to Peter's presentation? We don't appear to, Peter. Peter, thanks for... Oh, sorry, Dean.
Through the chair, Peter, time frame. What's your time frame? What's council's time frame in regards to getting this project on the move?
So this is just signalling that the project's coming down the track. So the concept planning will be commencing probably in the next 2 to 3 months and heading towards later this year. But then once we get through that process, it'll be into the new year, 2021, before council will be making any formal decisions once it's gone through its process. Hoping to get some stuff and any funding issues that come out of that into our long-term planning process as well. So we'll be doing some high-level almost guesstimates for the planning process later in October, November this year when we start the LTP financial stuff. Yeah. So it's a little bit of a, how long's a piece of string to the level of engagement and how far we take it. And then we've got the reserve management plan for the Makatu Te Puke Ward reserve management plan review. It'll go into there as well as part of the process. And yep. So there'll be plenty of opportunity coming forth for engagement. This is not a decision point today. It's just a signal and the opportunity to engage for. And I say I'm encouraged by what I've heard to date. So that's good. So Madam Chair, if there's no further questions, I've got to catch a plane to Christchurch. So I'll leave the meeting now. So.
Okay, thanks very much. Thanks, Peter, and we'll look forward to your next update.
Bye.
Our last presentation is an update on applications for resource consent to discharge into the Kaituna. I do see Marlene as part of, is Marlene there? I'm just assuming Marlene is doing this, or is it Jupim?
No, Matamana, it's going to be the applicant. Vanessa Ham is representing and coordinating the applicant.
Okay.
And Todd Whitaker is also on the line. He's the consent processing officer.
Thank you, Marlene.
Thank you.
Morena, thank you for having us along to the meeting today. I thought just for efficiency, I would start with introductions and then how we propose to run through the presentation. And if that suits, then continue in that way. My name's Vanessa Ham. I'm a resource management lawyer with Holland Beckett based in Tauranga and acting for AFCO in this instance. Also joining into this Hui o Zui today, we have Adam Grant, who is the Rangiuru plant manager from AFCO, and Dean Tucker, who is the regional operations manager from AFCO. We also have the ecologists that have been working on the resource consent application. So that is Luke Gowing and Daniel Gulliver from Argo Environmental. What I proposed to do was just run through where the resource consent applications were in terms of the statutory process, then pass to Adam Grant to just speak briefly to the operations at Rangiuru. And then I thought you may like to hear from Daniel Gulliver at Argo Environmental about the monitoring and water quality and ecology work that's been undertaken in relation to the river. And then, of course, we are happy to answer any questions. So if
Thank
that
you,
sounds...
Yeah, thank you, Vanessa. Yeah, I'm happy with that process, so I will leave it to you.
Thank you. So there are resource consent applications currently before the Regional Council for discharge to the river. They covered the discharge of treated wastewater from the operations to the river and also to land through seepage. There's also an application for the discharge of stormwater, defrost and cooling water to the river, and an application for the discharge of amenities wastewater to land. So that's sort of the package of applications. In October last year, AFCO went out to the authority and also the tangata whenua that had been identified by the Regional Council with an invitation to meet to give an update on where the applications were at and also to seek feedback. And subsequent to that, AFCO did meet with Hauhepa Maxwell for Tapuika, who came to the Rangiuru site. And we also attended a meeting at the Te Awhai Marae in Makatu in late November with Ngāti Pikiao. But apart from that, the other parties weren't able to meet. Since then, there has been some more information that's been submitted to the Regional Council, and it's made an information request and that's been responded to. The applications have not been notified yet, but AFCO has asked the Regional Council to publicly notify those applications, and I understand that should occur relatively soon, and no doubt at the end Marlene and Todd will be able to update us on that. That was really all I wanted to say about the statutory process. So from there I will pass to Adam Grant, the Rangiuru plant manager, and just ask him to briefly capture the operations there.
I'm just trying to get my camera working, hang on. No, it's not going to work. But anyway, I'll just, so I'm Adam Grant, the plant manager at AFCO Rangiuru. So I'll just run through a little bit about the history of the plant and some of our processing capabilities. So the plant opened in 1965 and has undergone several large developments and upgrades throughout its history. The plant's now a very modern meat processing facility, and the developments and upgrades continue to this day. Over the last 10 years, we've spent approximately 11.7 million on upgrades of the site, including our water treatment facility. The plant is a multi-species plant, and in any given year, we are capable of processing up to 90,000 beef, 230,000 calves, and in excess of 1 million sheep. So that keeps us at the very leading edge of the meat industry. We're one of the largest employers in the area. We employ up to 600 people in the peak season, and approximately 90% of that labour force is sourced locally. So that's just a wee bit of history, I guess, and what we're about and what we do. So just before I pass on to Daniel to run through some more details around the consent and the science aspects, AFCO, I'd like to extend an open invite to everyone on the call to attend the site and take a tour of the plant. If any of you wish to take that invite up, just make contact with any of us after the call and we can arrange a date and time. So I'll now pass you on to Daniel and he can run through some of the scientific aspects.
Great, thanks Adam. I'm going to have a go at sharing my screen. Might just be a little bit clearer for everyone as we see it. So I'll just expand a little bit on the application that Vinny touched on previously. So we've got a series of consents that we're currently applying for. The main one is a treated wastewater discharge from the processing plant to the Kaitana River. We've got associated consent applications as well for seepage from the base of the treatment system. There's amenities wastewater discharge to land, and a discharge to the Kaitana from defrost and cooling water, as well as stormwater from the plant. So the amenities wastewater, it's mainly from the ablution and kitchen facilities on the site. It's a standard sort of treatment plant system, which is discharged to a soakage field, similar to what you the domestic system. The defrost, cooling water, and stormwater. This is effectively water that's abstracted from the river, cycled through the plant to cool various pieces of equipment, and discharged back into the river. Nothing is added to that water during the process. And the only change really prior to discharge is a change in temperature. And there is a cooling water pond which helps regulate that temperature prior to being discharged back into the river.
Thank you. Can everyone see where you're pointing? Can you see where Daniel's got us pointed, just to point out where the water is collected prior to discharge?
Yeah, Daniel might have to speak closer to the mic because it gets a bit...
Oh, sorry. It's not clear.
So Daniel's just pointing out with his pointer the location for the holding pond, which is where the water is collected prior to discharge. So it essentially enters in that part, the sort of northern point in the plant, and then there's a discharge outlet at the southern end of the pond, and the water discharges to the Kaituna just below the current location for the water intake structure. So I'm just sort of circling around where at the bottom of that image where the water take is, and just downstream of that is the discharge from the stormwater pond. It's not very clear the total extent of that pond because it is has some growth on it, but it is quite extensive. Okay.
Yep.
Back to you, Daniel.
Thanks, Luke. But really the main part of this application is the treated wastewater discharge from the processing plant. Now there's an initial screening process, which is the save all. Solids that are captured in that screen are discharged to the solids pit, and then the wastewater stream enters an anaerobic pond system. There's 3 ponds here. It then goes through an oxidation pond system up here, and then back through a series of 4 wetlands, which are connected in series. And the discharge point is actually just in the corner of the pond here, and it's part underground and discharged to the river in the bend here. The current consent is for 6,500 cubes per day. It's a dry weather volume, and the whole treatment process allows a 40-day retention from the discharge from the plant to discharge to the river. The current consent has a number of consent limits on a number of parameters. AFCO has been monitoring these for a number of years. And as Adam alluded to before, there have been upgrades over the years, and the wetland system was more recent addition. I think that was 2005 that was installed, and that's why it's not instantly intuitive why they're not in order sort of coming back to the wetlands, because it was a more recent addition to the system. And with all of these consent limits, the AFCO has been in general compliance during the last consent duration. The river monitoring, it does indicate a slight increase in TN and TP downstream of the discharge, but this returns to levels very quickly. Now, the application for the main discharge was, this application process has been in the works for a few years now. I think we started this process about 2016, if not earlier. The main application was lodged in February 2017. The Regional Council came back asking for more information on a number of ecological aspects within the river. And we have, since that time, done some more work in terms of pathogen levels, both within the discharge and the river, the zone of mixing within the river, and ecological health of the river. While we had a number of studies and surveys prior to the application, we've extended the duration. So we've got at least 12 months of monitoring of macroinvertebrate data, both upstream and downstream. And we've also undertaken a fish survey in the Kainuu and tributaries in the area as well. And the results of all of this work have indicated that the discharge does not currently have any discernible effect on the ecological health of the river. Now, all of this additional work, as well as the results of more recent consultation that we've undertaken since the application that Vanessa alluded to before, we've submitted this back to Regional Council, I believe in April of this year. Yeah, so that was all we were really intending to cover, but definitely open to any questions or comments or feedback that anyone may have.
Could I ask, are the oxidation ponds and the anaerobic ponds, are they lined?
No, they're not currently lined, so that is why one of the application for is currently before the council is discharge to ground. Yes, so to answer your question, no, they're not lined. So one of the, we have applied for an application to discharge to ground through the ponds.
And I'd also add as well that we do have monitoring bores in the vicinity of the ponds to assess whether there's any impact from that seepage.
So what consideration have you had for the likely increase in groundwater level as a result of sea level rise? How are you factoring that into your proposals?
Look, I think we're sufficiently far inland. We're 14 k's, well, in terms of the discharge, point of discharge to the open ocean, it's 14 k's distance. I'm not sure what it is as the crow flies, but we're considerable distance inland. So I think in terms of the application, there has, we haven't, considered impacts of sea level rise on the operation because we don't believe it's going to be significant.
Sorry, on ground level rise, with more extreme weather events, you inevitably have an impact on groundwater and the groundwater table, which may fluctuate and get higher. So just, since the ponds aren't lined, I just need to understand what you're planning for there.
That's something that we could consider if people have a concern about it. We could look at that and present evidence, further evidence at the hearing in relation to groundwater. But the applications do cover the current effects of the discharge on existing groundwater levels. Essentially between the ponds, the current ponds, and the river. So, you know, to answer your question, we haven't directly looked at the potential increase, effects of increased rainfall on groundwater levels adjacent to the ponds themselves, but we don't think that's going to be a particularly significant issue.
Madam Chair, if I can just ask a couple of questions here. I guess, you know, the critical issue for the likes of Te Mana o Kaituna and Te Maru o Kaituna and also iwi is the quality of the water at discharge. And you've made a comment that discharge into the Kaituna, you made a comment that there is sort of no discernible effects, and I guess you've got a lot of science to back that up. And in fact, downstream there's a slight increase in whatever those attributes were. But overall, you seem very confident that the quality of the water and discharge in Kaituna is pretty good. And I want to first acknowledge that you're a big employer of local people, and that's great. And I think that's really important. But I'm also aware that the new regulations around the health of water and what we refer to as Te Mana o Te Wai has been as primary in the current directions coming down from government. So I suppose your connection and your consultation with iwi is important, and you mentioned a number of the connections you've already made. But I think there's probably a bit more conversation to be had in that space. I'm just familiar with discharges into, and I've been part of and parcel of discharge into Lake Rotorua from treatment plants, and there are common issues that come out of that for Māori. I note that you've got your amenities wastewater treatment plant there, which addresses your pollution blocks and things like that. So there's a number of issues around the quality of the water, both from a science point of view, and then really getting some comfort from an iwi point of view that it matches their sense of the mana o the wai. And people get confused, what does that mean? I think there's a clearer direction coming down in the national policy statements about that. So in the context of your consent process you're going through, maybe councillors who are here can answer the point around, will there be some sort of reset in the context of the consent approach as a response to the NPS? I'm assuming there will be, but hey, I don't think that's coming in for a little while, but I just alert you to a few points around Māori contributions in this space and just ensuring that that's covered and ticked off appropriately. So probably more of a comment than questions.
Thank you, Taru. I have a question. Given that if this is going through a whole process and that you're so that it is treated effluent, why is there no consideration for it to go onto land as opposed to back into the Kaituna?
It is going.
Who wants to? Land is an option that has been considered, but the issue is around the volumes of water that is generated as part of the treatment process, and if you're going to land irrigate, you need a considerable amount of land adjacent to the plant, which AFCO does not have access to, and would not be able to obviously, buy up the land that would be required or to land irrigate. So they've got a world-class treatment system in place. It's very effective and efficient at reducing nutrient loads and pathogen loads. So our monitoring has shown both of the wastewater and in the river that that when the water is discharged to the river, it is having very minor effect on the quality of the water. So just getting back to your question about land irrigation, it would require, given the volumes of water, considerable land area to land irrigate to treat.
Yeah, I raised the question because we're moving into the freshwater management space, and a big issue for landowners and even Māori Land Trust is around water allocation. And, you know, you're surrounded by huge orchards. And, you know, what's the feasibility of some of that water being used on orchards is, if, as you say, the water is treated, given that water allocation is going to be a big issue for all of us. And it just seems, you know, if you're pumping it down into the Kaituna, why can't we be looking at it as it allocating, you know, to some of these orchards, and even a lot of land that'll be wanting to be developed, a lot of Māori land as well, having conversations around the feasibility of some of that water being used to irrigate those orchards.
I think that's something we can certainly note as we move into the process. I don't know what the position of the orchard owners would be, but it is useful to have that feedback for consideration. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Piki Thomas here. I just have a pātai. Thanks for the presentation. I wanted just to, and yeah, I'm interested to hear the feedback around that, the options around if the river wasn't there, what you would do. You may have said this, but my connection through the through being able to listen to the whole presentation was a little bit broken. But I wanted to take up the comment around a world-class treatment plant. I haven't, unless it was in that broken part, I didn't actually hear any contrast around what international best practices and how we might fare in that space. Have you got a comment on that?
Is that something that Adam or Dean might want to speak to?
Somebody.
Dean,
well, it's probably better for Luke, because Luke probably knows more about different systems. But as far as the FCO group goes, yeah, the Rangiuru treatment is best in class. And we've invested a lot in it along the way. But yeah, Luke will know more about how it sits internationally.
That it is a world-class system, because what it allows for is dealing with the key issues around the wastewater, which is nutrient loads and pathogen treatment. We understand that, you know, based on world practice, this is essentially what is adopted overseas, and in terms of the final product, which is wastewater discharge to the river, it is you know, a significant level of treatment discharging to the river.
Can I find those comparisons anyway? Is it able to be researched to see what our performance is versus overseas best practices?
We could provide some information if you would like to look at that further.
Yes, please.
Kira Dean here, through the chair. Just a few questions, I suppose. First of all, thank you for the presentation. I do remember the invitation coming through for members and iwi to come through for a site visit, etc. I think last year we were unable, whatever the reason was, and hence I think why we're catching up via Zoom meeting now. I suppose my perspective is always going to be the river. And our objective is to get the river back to the healthiest we can. I think that is now central government's objective as well. So we're working all together on this. Just a point on Councillor Nees, the salt water wedge comes right up to Waitangi, and you're about a mile away from that. So I think there's some due diligence around climate warming and etc. and tides coming in, salt water, etc. So that's it in regards to the lining. It might pay to do a little bit of investigation around that. Just picking up also on a point that Piki mentioned around international standard, I think for New Zealand, we're pretty much the standard. And I think, picking up, I think it was Te Taru, mentioned around the work that they've been doing up in Rotorua around the municipal waste that's coming from there and how that's been treated. And that there's probably, you could call that an international standard, that the quality of the water once it goes through there comes out pretty clean. And so, I mean, I hear that you're saying that the standard of this site that I'm just looking at the picture up here is world class. I see water treatment. I don't hear anything around the filtration system or UV light, those sorts of things that may be included in this. I'm not sure, but I didn't hear it. So around how that water, when it is extracted back into the kaituna, it is, you're telling me that that is good. I'm saying, are you able to up that to a different level, to a higher level? I know there's costs, but in the long term, I suppose it's around becoming, if Rangiuru, AFCO is to become the world's best, well then, here's an opportunity. Councillor Mate Moana, McDonald, talked around possibly other orchards, Vanessa. I think something to possibly think about, and it's not really for AFCO to follow through on, but with the Rangiuru Business Park possibly starting up across the road, there's an opportunity there to look at how waste is sorted between AFCO and with possibly with the new Rangiuru Business and I don't know if Scott is still in charge of that, but that might be someone you want to talk to around where they're at. Because I think the opportunity here is not just for the works, but it's for the community, for the wider area. The lack of land, yeah, there's a lack of land for distribution back to land. However, if we're going to put it into the river, let's put it back the best we can. And so it's probably going to be cleaner. I would expect it to be cleaner than the water you pull out. So the water you pull out of the river, you do your business, and then when you put it back in, it should be cleaner than what you're pulling out. That would be the bar, I suppose, for me personally, because I know that I've got mukapunas and there's a few kids that swim down at Waitangi there in that river, and they'll swim there every summer, regardless of what you tell them, they're going to swim there because they've swum there because their parents have swum there. So it's that kind of community thing, and I would hope that if we're going to look this way, and I suppose I'm targeting, Marlene. So if we've got a standard across the Bay of Plenty on how we should do this, this should then apply for everybody. And if Rotorua Lakes District, how they're treating the municipal waste up there is a model, then let's set a bar somewhere. So I suppose in a way I'm asking our councillors and staff and regional council to consider, if we're going to make a change, let's make a change. And I'm not saying that, I'm not asking that AFCO have to go out and do this by themselves. I'm saying as us as Te Maru members, us as council, let's work together to get an outcome that is going to benefit all. So that's kind of where my thinking is at the moment. But just a last point, Rangiuru married, she was a high chieftainess of Tapuika. Her brother was Maru Kukere, which is the marae across the road from where AFCO is. And her husband, she married Whakaue Kaipapa, which is Ngāti Whakaue. So Ngāti Whakaue and Tapuika are linked through that kuia Rangiuru. Beautiful woman. Rangiuru is also the name of the maunga that Tapuika hold as being special. So just a little bit of history there. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean.
Yeah, kia ora, Dean. Sorry, Madam Chair. Yeah, I totally support the sentiments that have been expressed by Dean. But I suppose the point is that there are sensitivities for iwi in this space, obviously, around discharge. And every time discharge is mentioned into our waterways, sort of sirens go on. And so I suppose I'll just make a point that your level of connection and consultation with iwi, I suppose my question is the robustness of that, and you had heard the sense around the wastewater treatment plant. So it's a more of an understanding from iwi that this is what you've got, this is the level you've got to, this is the discharge point, and this is the quality of the water going in. And I think that clarity is going to be important, in my view, in the context of the progress of your consent. So I'll just put that on the table, really, because there would be some question marks in that space, quite big time, because again, the Māori perception or the Māori concept of Mātauranga Māori of Te Mana o Te Wai and the mauri of the water is critical to them, and it's their science being engaged alongside Western science. Don't want to complicate it. The issue is really around the quality of that water from both perspectives. So whether that's settled or not, I don't know. But anyway, that's just another comment. I don't want to make it more of a challenge than it obviously already is.
No, I mean, thank you for that feedback. Certainly AFCO is aware of the significance of the Kaituna River to iwi and through the work also that the authority is doing. And the meetings with Hauhepa Maxwell for Tapawika and also the wider hui at Ngāti Pikiao Marae did provide good opportunities to have the sort of feedback and issues that have come up today and questions that AFCO will be looking at as it moves through the process. But certainly the engagement is not closed either. That can be ongoing. So I think taking on board what we've heard today, there may well be more opportunities for more engagement as we head through the process.
Yes, and Te Maru, for you, Madam Chair, and Dean as the Chair, you play an important role in this, no doubt, as a co-governance entity with the Regional Council. So, so I think it's really important that Te Maru o Kaituna really understands what's going on and has a participation in this space. Just a comment.
Yeah, Kelly, just a comment again. I mean, I'm after the best deal we can get, guys. That's what I'm after.
I understand that.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for the team from the forum?
Mati Moana, I could speak to this.
Yes.
Yeah, I've been listening with interest, and I see that the Deputy Mayor of the Western Bay, John Scrimgeour, has joined us now. So both John and myself have been on a bit of a journey over the last 3 years, and even a bit longer actually, in terms of the Te Puke wastewater treatment plant resource consent renewal, which was just granted a new consent for 35 years about 6 months ago. And one of the conditions of the new resource consent was to do a long-term investigation into alternative discharge options for the treated wastewater that comes out of the Te Puke wastewater treatment plant. And we've considered many different options that don't involve disposal to the river, such as the crop or the horticultural water that you talked about, Mati Moana, also discharged to wetlands, forestry, as they used to do in Rotorua, but they've discontinued that practice now. And Dean talked about the Rangiuru Business Park. I think their preferred option for their wastewater is to pipe it back to the Te Puke wastewater treatment plant. So that is also going to have quite a big effect on that plant and how we deal with the wastewater going forward. So this is, I mean, I can see that it's a very difficult decision or resource consent to work through, and I don't want to sort of raise too many alarm bells, but they're probably already going off in some places. But the possibility of Rangiuru pumping their wastewater to Rangiuru Business Plant and then back to Te Puke is quite significant. We do have quite a large capacity down there, but it does revolve around these alternative options. And you know, we've done a significant amount of study through the consultancy company Acon, and maybe Argo could perhaps touch base with them at some stage. But this is an ongoing process. Nothing has been decided. No option has been finalised. There are significant costs involved in all of these options, I think, and our objective is to get to the point that is best for everyone. I think the council, Tangata Whenua, the river, and like I say, it's an ongoing process. Perhaps John Scrimgeour would like to comment on that as well. But so I guess I've been put here to bring my Western Bay perspective, and so I guess that's probably enough for now.
Thank you, Grant. Do we have any other questions?
Actually, if I could just add, Hohepa Maxwell, who was referred to earlier, he was also a iwi representative on the Te Puke Wastewater Treatment Plant Alternative Options Assessment Group. I'm not sure that he will continue doing that or not in light of recent developments at Tapawika Iwi Authority, but certainly Dean, if it could be a good opportunity for someone like yourself to maybe get involved with that.
I had heard through the grapevine that there may have been a change in representation at the Tapawika level, so I will speak to Marlene separately about that, just to make sure that we're speaking to the right people as we move forward. Thank you for your comments in relation to Te Puke and Rangiuru Business Park. I acted for Western Bay Plenty District Council in relation to that resource consent application. And it is, yeah, I agree with what you say in terms of the duration of that and the options, the investigation into long-term options during the period of the consent. That consent does provide for capacity for the Rangiuru Business Park, but the council did a lot of work around work that would be required to make sure that the quality impacts on the river would be maintained and certainly not worsened with that increased capacity going through. So there is some work there that is available, and I have shared that with AFCO, so they are aware of that. And we will make sure that we look at everything in the round, not just in isolation.
I have one. I have a question, and it's probably to the consent staff, possibly you, Marlene, or maybe Todd. If the treated effluent was to be discharged to the Kaituna River, what sort of monitoring in that area will be done on a long-term basis?
Sorry, Matwana. That would be, usually would be, we haven't obviously gone through the process yet, so I can't really tell you what the conditions would look like on this consent. But a standard practice for the regional council for any kind of discharge consent is to have ongoing monitoring at the outlet and within the receiving water body after reasonable mixing. So and then those results are usually traced back to either national standards if we have them. I'm assuming there will be some coming through from the MPS, some standards coming through there. Otherwise, we use the ANZAC guidelines for rivers. So those standards or discharge limits are put onto the consent, and then it's followed up with a monitoring condition which requires ongoing monitoring throughout the life of the consent. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Just one other question then. Do we have any other, how many other outfalls do we have along the Kaituna?
For discharges?
Yes.
Not many that I know of. We have the wastewater treatment plant and AFCO as the two main ones. The rest is mainly just diffuse runoff from farmland, but not point sources like this one.
All right. Thank you.
Just through the chair, Vanessa, I can confirm that Hoheto is no longer that contact for Tapuika. All contact can be made via information@tapuika.iwi.nz. Okay, that'll find a person.
Just checking, that last speaker from Western Bay, was that you? I've just got a message here that there's a council, Scrimmager has his hand up. Have you had the opportunity to talk?
No, I didn't. I did put my hand up. Just I was just going to essentially confirm what Grant was talking about in regard to the Te Puke town wastewater consent, but just to emphasise that this is a very long process that council is working through, talking with the community, with iwi and everybody involved, and it will take quite a number of years, we would anticipate, before a conclusion is reached as to what is appropriate alternative discharges going forward. So it's not something that's going to happen in 5 minutes. It's a very long process and a very thorough process. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
And Mati Moana, just a final comment from me, just an update on the discharge from the Rotorua Lakes into the Rotorua Lakes as an example. The matter of discharge is actually before the Environment Court now. And a decision is yet to be made in that space. So the discharge to land is still happening. Has to be agreement by iwi. The upgrade of the plant is being agreed to, so they'll upgrade the plant, but the discharge directly into the lake is in abeyance right now. So it might be an interesting case study in the course of time of how that pans out.
Yeah. I guess the other challenge with all of this too is the the contribution that they make, the economic contribution, and particularly the jobs. In the report we talk about 600 jobs. So it behoves us to all be on board to assist to resolve this issue that AFCO have, and it's just not a role for AFCO to find solution. I think we all have to find solution for this, given the jobs that AFCO provides. Yeah. So if we just one more check, then if we have any other questions, I'm going to bring this presentation to an end, even if unless Vanessa, your team have further contributions to make.
No, I think we've said all we came to say, and answered as many questions as we can. So just thank you again on behalf of AFCO for affording us the opportunity to make the presentation, and we look forward to engaging with you further as we continue through the process.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, people, moving along. I'm going to kick off our reports now and go back to the agenda. Our first report is the financial update. On your agenda pages 25 and 27. Thanks, Amanda, for sending me the run sheet. That's very helpful. So I'll hand this over to the report writer to present the financial update for Te Maru.
Ka kite, Madam Chair. I'm off.
Thank you, Te Taru.
Ka kite te taru.
Aye. Kia ora.
Who's presenting our report? I think you need to unmute yourself.
Sorry, that was me, Amanda here. So we can just take this report as read, and there's some recommendations there just to receive the report and to note the current balance of funds.
All right, before we do, are there any questions from the members?
Is that
Page 25, 27 of the agenda.
Okay, so this is our current as it sits. What's in the budget?
Correct. So if you look at the top of page 26, that's the current balance there.
I'm happy to move it if it needs to be moved.
Yes, I do. So we're moving to receive the report and noting the current balance. So, okay, I'll have a mover with Dean, a seconder, please.
Picky.
Picky.
And just a comment that our August meeting will be setting the new budget. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, as far as I know, I'm one of them, and I think Councillor Tānu Arapeta was the other person on this committee. Do we have a replacement for him? Amanda?
Sorry, in respect of what, Dane?
We've got a financial committee. Well, myself and Arapeta were on this on the budget for setting the budgets.
Oh, I see. I don't believe we've got a replacement. So, do you have any anyone who would like to do that?
Probably nothing rather.
He's actually left the meeting. I was actually going to suggest Te Taru, but he's exited already. Yeah, okay, I'm fine to do it.
Okay, noted. Thank you.
Do we need to pass a resolution or anything on that?
I will just note it in the minutes.
Okay.
Amanda, you got the mover and seconder. That was moved by Dean and seconded
by Picky, I think.
By Picky.
Yes, I do. Thank you. Sorry, I will actually get a mover and seconder to appoint you, Councillor McDonald, if that's okay.
Okay, I see Councillor Nee's hand up. I can't hear you though, Jane, so you're moving it.
You're on mute, Councillor Nees.
I will move.
Thank you.
And our seconder? I can't see the hand. Oh, Councillor Daly.
Councillor Daly.
Thank you. All right, our next report is proposed draft proposed change 5, Kaituna River. This is the regional policy statement. That would be you, Nessa?
Kia ora, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Cool,
I can't see you though.
No, well, it's not letting me, it's saying I can't start the video for whatever reason.
Oh, now we can
it's
see
working
you.
now. It's working now.
It's working.
Okay, well, tēnā rā koutou katoa. So basically, the purpose of my report is to present to the members of Te Maru a draft change to the regional policy statement that recognises and provides for the vision, objectives and desired outcomes of the Kaituna River document. So this is the first time it's been presented to members of Te Maru. Under the Tapuika Claim Settlement Act, regional council is required to change its regional policy statement to recognise and provide for the vision, objectives and desired outcomes of Kaitana He Taonga Tuku Iho, a treasure handed down. And that's included in Appendix 2 to my report. This is the first time that the forum have been given the opportunity to consider this change. Now I note that there is a workshop that's been scheduled for the 26th of June, and I also acknowledge that my understanding is the River Forum have commissioned an independent consultant, Dave Marshall, to provide advice to the forum on this plan change, and that advice will be provided at that workshop on the 26th of June. So really it's just an opportunity now to hear from the members of the forum any feedback they have on the draft change to the regional policy statement. Noting that this once it's embedded into the regional policy statement, it's required to be given effect to by district plans, notably the Rotorua, the Western Bay and the Tauranga City plans, and also any regional plans. So that's essentially it in a nutshell, and I'll pass it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Nessa.
Through you, Madam Chair. I spoke to Dave, and I'm not sure if he's with us in this Zoom, but I don't see him here, so I'm assuming he's not here. But he was going to join on via the live stream. So I had to talk to him this morning about what we're looking for, an independent advisor on behalf of Te Maru to look at this. Sorry, and he wants to have a meeting. He wants to have a meeting with just probably you, Nessa, and maybe Joe and others. Myself, I'm wanting to meet with him as well. And we just talk over it, so we kind of get a feeling. I've sent him a copy of this, our agenda today, so for the first time he'll see this as well, this draft, and then we'll work from there, from that point onwards. So there's a bit of getting to know each other, that sort of thing, and a little bit of going through the brief. He's got a copy of the project brief, so he understands what that is. But there is a little bit of work required around just getting up to play, talking about through the process and the dates required, and that's hoping to possibly have some of your support, Nessa, and any other staff members that are available can help towards that. And he's quite clear that it's a independent review, so it's looking out at us because we're all kind of part and parcel of. So I don't have too much to say about Dave. I don't know and Joe, you might be able to help because I think you know Dave better. But he is a consultant around resource management, and he's aware that it's the regional policy statement that we're looking at, and we're looking at how our document fits into that. So if you are here, Dave, do speak up, but otherwise, Joe, you might be able to give a bit of background, please.
I don't believe Dave is on the Zooey. I sent him the Zoom link but couldn't catch him on the phone, so I don't think he's with us. So I've known Dave Marshall for a number of years, and he's a very senior policy advisor who's worked with DOC and with TARIT, so Te Aroha River Oh no, I think he worked for Rokawa. So he's worked in a lot of, in and alongside a lot of co-governance groups and with tangata whenua. And as I understand it now, he is a consultant and he's doing bits of work for TAUT and now for Te Maru. So he's certainly got the skills to give an independent review of this type of nature.
Thanks, Joe. Basically, this is an opportunity now for the members of the forum to provide input to the change before it goes out for wider, broader public consultation. So at this stage, we're planning to report up feedback from Te Maru to the August meeting of the Strategy and Policy Committee, and then at that point, I'll be seeking, hopefully, approval to commence wider consultation. So at this point in time, consultation is specifically limited to Te Maru members only. And I'm happy to engage with Dave or with the members in whatever form they prefer.
Thank you, Nessa. I'll just open it up for the floor for comments from the members, if any.
Could I just say, I think a lot of work's gone into this, and particularly this was presented to a workshop of the Regional Council, and I had an opportunity to provide some input to NASA at that point. I do have a couple more things that I've noticed in this agenda paper, but they're just slight wording changes, and I won't take the time of the Te Maru members today.
Yes, through the chair, I think I'd like some time just to read through it and familiarise myself with it in preparation for the workshop on the 26th. Yeah, gosh.
Through you, Chair, I'm wondering whether you could share, so the workshop is on the 26th, just share what the process might be for the members. So my understanding would perhaps be that Dave ran that workshop to take members through his feedback. Is that how you imagine that? And staff like NASA and myself may attend that to provide any necessary guidance. Yeah.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, I was of the assumption that we would be in attendance and that Dave would have a look at the change and provide feedback, and that would be provided in advance of the workshop so that it could be considered at that point in time. And then obviously the idea, or my view, is that we would take the feedback from Te Maru to the August meeting of the Strategy and Policy Committee, along with any recommended changes in response to the Te Maru members' concerns.
Thank you, Nessa. Okay,
Yeah.
so
Through the chair, that's my understanding. I haven't had that conversation with Dave yet. He knows he'll be in a workshop, but not the process.
okay. So obviously a lot is going to stem out of the workshop, NASA, as to the responses of Te Maru back to this plan change. So I guess we'll leave it to the 27th of June workshop. But in the meantime, back to the report, which what I will take is having been read, to call for a mover of those resolutions. So if I can have a mover and seconder, please. Might have to help me, Amanda, with the hands up. I can't really see everybody very clearly. Can I start with a mover, please?
I've got Nick there as a mover.
I see Nick as a mover, and I can have a seconder, please.
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay, and Dean, the seconder.
Just a point for clarification. The workshop, Amanda, can that be zoomed in? Can members zoom into that? So we don't necessarily need to be there physically.
Absolutely.
By then we might be in alert level 1, I don't know, but we can zoom into that as well, can't we?
Correct. So we're running it as a sort of a hybrid workshop where you can choose to be there in person or you can Zoom in.
Cool.
Great. All right, thank you, Nessa.
Ngā mihi, ngā mihi.
Okay, we're on the final stretch. Our last report is the Toi Moana catchment, Kaituna catchment operations report. And we also have a PowerPoint presentation. This is on your agenda 79, page 79. Go back at 79, 77. Should be 77, 79.
Tēnā koe. Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is my one to speak to. I'm just wondering, how is everyone going in terms of, is 5 minutes about right? I've got 2 short video clips to show. Is that your expectation, or how long were you thinking for this presentation?
You're our last item on our agenda today, Pim. So when we've had enough, we'll let you know, Pim.
Sounds good. Okay, so I guess.
I'd be surprised if some of us had left.
Well, that's what I was thinking. The old whare paku must be calling some. Hey, what I'll do is I will start with the 2 brief video clips. One is from the Kaituna River rediversion opening day, which is 2 minutes long, and the other is from Te Pourepo o Kaituna Wetland Creation Project, 2 of the bigger projects that the Regional Council's been working on in the rohe of Te Maru o Kaituna. And then I'll go and see if there are any questions about the report. Is that all right with you, Madam Chair?
That's fine, Pim.
Okay, so we'll start with this one here then, which is the Te Pourepo o Kaituna.
Pim, is it correct that there's no sound to this?
Oh no, you should all be hearing sound.
Well, I don't know if anybody else is hearing sound, but I can't hear anything. I can see Jane nodding her head. She's not hearing sound either.
Right. Maybe I can ask Amanda, are you aware of how I can ensure that the sound gets shared as well?
I'm actually not, Pam. I have never tried a video with sound via screen share on Zoom. I'll ask Miranda, but I'm not aware of how that would work.
Okay. There's no narration that goes with it, Madam Chair. It's just uplifting music. So if you can just imagine uplifting music.
Okay.
I'll share the the clip with you all by email.
Right. It's a pity you didn't have a voiceover because it's a great video.
We might be able to get the voiceover added to it retrospectively.
Mm. I'd recommend you do.
Hey, Dean, whereabouts is your cultural centre envisaged to be?
You have to unmute yourself, Dean.
It's in the top corner up near the tower, so where the road is. There was a triangular bit in that area there. So that's where we're proposing some sort of cultural centre, wetland experience, cafeteria, a cycling track, whatever. Yeah, so it's up in that point.
Okay, so thank you, members. Any other questions on that? I'm just trying to relocate where I had the tab for the rediversion video. I found it. So I will just share that on your screen as well. Thanks for bearing with me here. And apologies if you've already seen this one.
Grant, if you look in the report on page 81, the lower part of the picture, you see that triangular area? That's the area we're looking at.
Oh yeah, I'm looking at that now, yeah.
So that one did have the beautiful voice of Rauri Bana narrating over the top. So apologies that sound didn't come through, members. I assumed that the sound would come through with the sharing of the videos. But I assume some of you have seen that second video since the 12th of February anyway. Whoops, just turn off the... there we go. So in terms of the report itself, in the agenda pack, are there any questions about any of those operations that have been detailed in there?
Just one, Pim. The care group, the Kaharoa Kokako Trust, how are they getting on? Because they were doing a great job with protecting the kūkako in that. And last time I spoke to them, they were talking about pest control up in that area. How are they going on? How are they getting on?
Yeah, so through you, Madam Chair, the Kaharoa Kōkako Trust has been operating since 1995, I think, or 94, and they've been extremely successful. They have got to the point where the forests in that Paraiti Valley are actually overflowing with kōkako, and they're at carrying capacity. So the surplus chicks are now dispersing beyond the pest control area into adjacent forests managed by Blakely Pacific and moving into other farms. I met with a care group that is just forming at Te Ranga, the Te Ranga farming community, the other day, and they are really keen to see what they can do to add more pest control around the edges of the Kaharoa Kōkako Trust's area on the bush parts of the farms downstream, to try and encourage the kōkako to, you know, populate the whole of the Paraiti Valley, and if possible also connect through various bush corridors over the hill at Te Ranga down into the Waiari and then up into Otane Wainuku. And, you know, ideally, in the very long term, the populations of kōkako at Rotoehu Forest, Kaharoa and Otane Wainuku would be functionally linked through you know, integrated pest control and corridors of habitat. That's something that I think we can aspire to in the next few decades.
Thanks, Pam. Yeah, we did a relocation of kōkako from there to Otane Wainuku a few years back, I think. So it's always good to keep a track of how these groups are operating and whether they need support and any things that they're doing. So I think Rangiwewehi were quite strong in supporting the kōkako group as well.
Thank you, Dee.
Pim, can I ask you a question about some of these community care groups, like the Makatu Ongataro Wetland Society and Bay Conservation Alliance as sort of an umbrella organisation that brings them all together? We had a bit of a discussion at council yesterday in one of our long-term plan workshops regarding the level of service for maintenance, especially with all these new cycleways being developed in environments that are not traditionally maintained, I suppose, and the fact that when you create a cycleway you disturb a lot of weeds and plants that have sort of been latent under different ground covers, but when you do the earthworks, they all start springing up, and when the cyclists and walkers start going down these pathways, they expect a similar level of service that you get in an urban environment in terms of weeds and incursion into the environment, I suppose, and the cost to the council that will start to incur by way of increased maintenance requirements. And I was just wondering what your perspective is on that, and especially in regards to Bay Conservation Alliance and MOS, and how they've been actively seeking, you know, funding for administration, but also contract work to provide maintenance in these sort of areas, which I suppose started in the wetlands environment down at Makatu. But I know over at Little Waihi Estuary, they've also been branching out over there, and I see that this is a good opportunity to leverage funding, I suppose, to perhaps government funding and other organisational funding, maybe Tecton Bay Trust, but rather than it all falling on the council ratepayers, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, so through you, Madam Chair, the Regional Council has partnership agreements with the MOSE group, Makitū-Ngātaura Wetland Society, at 4 sites so far. They are the Makitu Spit, Nudix Beach, Dotterel Point at Pukahina, and the Waihi Estuary Wildlife Management Reserve. And there's another one that was started by the Makitu Taipuri Trust, but has got some MOSE involvement at the Bora Pits further up the Kaitana River. I think, yeah, what you say is possible. There's lots of different options for delivering that kind of work. The other thing with those cycleways, I think that we can learn from places like Hawke's Bay, which have got a huge cycleway network along their stop banks and through their public lands, where, you know, if it's possible for grazing to continue, you know, at the location where the cycleway is, then the animals sometimes take care of it themselves. But that works better if you've got sheep rather than cows. But yeah, I mean, as a council, I think we're open to all sorts of different ways of achieving the objectives, and some of the bids that have been put forward as green projects to central government might open up other funding opportunities to develop those partnerships further. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but the short version is yes, I think there's options there. But you know, so typically developing and maintaining cycleways is a district or city council function rather than a regional council function. But we're happy to be involved in the conversation and see if we can help create ways of making things happen.
Yeah, no, I didn't comment before, but I congratulate on your CIP proposals, and you know, that's where I think, you know, getting creative in those areas can sort of help our ratepayers in this sort of area. So I don't know, I guess we're finishing soon, but I've got a picture of the Whare Nui down at Ford Road. If I could share it briefly, would I be able to do that if I find it? Mati Mana?
That's fine. That's fine.
Okay, I'll just see if I can find it without. I suppose you can see. Oh, here it is. Yeah. So here it is.
Okay.
So yeah, this was traditionally used. I'll take it off now, I guess. That was traditionally used as a backpackers set up, I believe, by Uncle Boy, and he provided entertainment plus accommodation for backpackers. Probably a bit of a precursor to the modern freedom campers, I suppose, but I'm not quite sure what happened there in terms of the operation. But anyway, I think it is a great opportunity for us.
Thank you. Thank you, Grant. Back to you, Pim. Pim, has your presentation come to an end?
Yes, I have nothing further to add. If there are any other questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'm finished.
Okay. Back to the members. Any more comments from the members?
Yeah, much more through you, Madam Chair. Just another question for Pim around the Ford Road pump station upgrade. So the report says there's 2 options, option 1 and 6B, and it's kind of described in the pictures below. This is generally in the same area of that Western Bay we're talking about with Boy Corbett's place in there. Are you working with them, or are you working together on this, or is this only the regional council?
At the moment, it's a regional council project. So Ford Road pump station, the 2 options, the 6B is keeping the pump station where it is now, but piping that discharge so that it follows Ford Road or it goes under the new channel, and then it's piped out on the seaward side of the salinity block.
Oh yeah.
And what that does is it would take that Paru water away from the estuary rather than having it discharged into the river just at the point where it enters the estuary. The other option, option 1, would see additional capacity added at the site of the diagonal drain pump station just downstream of the Wildlife Management Reserve. So I think that's about 2.5 kilometres upstream from Ford Road. And by timing the discharge on the outgoing tide, I think we've modelled that we could reduce the proportion of the discharge entering the estuary. It would reduce from 86% or something like that down to 29%. So it would avoid the expensive and complicated piping option of 6B, and it would achieve a big reduction, not a total reduction, but a big reduction in the proportion that enters the estuary. The downside is that the hydraulics are quite complicated because you have to move the water quite a long way from Ford Road to the new pump station. So you might end up having to install some sort of relay pump near the Kaituna Road, Ford Road junction to get the water moving further west before it enters the river.
That land is dock land, I notice in this drawing here.
Pardon me, sorry?
The land for, I think it's option 1, it's dock land.
So there's DOC is the administrating agent for the Kaituna Wildlife Management Reserve.
Yep.
But there is regional council land at the site of the diagonal drain pump station. And so it would be a question of, if it's placed on the upstream side, then it might have to encroach onto the DOC land. If it's placed on the downstream side, then it might require a small amount of additional land from the Semmerling family in order to make it work.
Okay, thanks.
Do we have any more questions for Pim? I'm going to Grant? No.
Look, just, I don't know if it's really for Pim, but for the whole group, I don't know if you're having a wrap up at the end or this is really the end of it now, but with regard to Peter Watson's presentation and the possibility of making it more suitable for freedom campers, Jane made a comment earlier on with regard to environmental effects of freedom campers, but I was just wondering if there's any other comments from any other members about this issue, I guess, because as Western Bay councillors, both me and John have encountered a lot of hostility towards freedom campers as we've consulted on freedom camping areas with our Katikati Waihi Beach Ward Reserve Management Plan, but also what was it? We consulted on spots right across the district actually in the bylaw review last year or the year before, and Makatu especially, there was a lot of opposition to freedom camping in the township down there. There are designated spots and they're seasonal, they're not year round, but there was a general sort of theme that the locals wanted them removed completely from the township, and just from my personal perspective, I saw possibly the Ford Road site as a good opportunity to move the freedom campers maybe away from Makatu Central out to this site and provide better services for them, like the toilet block and so forth, maybe in the form of a Kiwi camp type arrangement. But we also have the issue at Te Puke and Commerce Lane car park and so forth. But just got the sense that maybe some of the members might not be that keen on using Ford Road as a freedom camping site either.
Kia ora, Grant. I can't help you with that, but I may be able to help you with the commercial lane in Te Puke. So we're developing a submission to the annual plan for Western Bay about how we might utilise some of the land in town to service that. We're thinking more, they call them Kiwi camps. So they're gated, kind of a gated type thing. They have services. They are actually managed, and they have things like that. So, yeah, I don't know. That might work. It has to be looked after. You just can't let people camp wherever they want, I think, without any sort of management or responsibility. Someone needs to be responsible.
Sorry, through the chair. I suppose the Rotorua, we've been looking really closely at this around our lakes, and what we've found is the more we've put a little bit of management in, where there's just restrictions around how many vans can sit at, say, like Trout Pool, with the facilities there, we've noticed remarkable change as far as what the practices are, and it's a little bit slow. And I think the model that's really worked here in Rotorua is Lake Okaraka, where the locals have actually taken over a little space, and they charge minimal, like it's $5 a van or something. But they suddenly make 20,000 a month or something ridiculous in those busy periods that they're now putting back into wetland projects and environmental projects, and that's been probably the biggest success story in Rotorua. But I know personally, because I live at Okere Falls or Taramarae, and the change that's happened at Trout Pool has been quite significant, and it's just by putting just rules and a few regulations around what they can do and having the facilities there. So Rotorua is definitely, I mean, obviously our mayor, Stevie's, I think she's one of the mayors on the task force looking at this camping issue. So if we can help out, let us know.
Yeah. No, I mean, just as final comment, unless everyone's had their say, but yeah, so it sounds like there could be an opportunity to make Ford Road work for Freedom Campers if you provide the facilities.
My question, I don't think Peter really answered, and that was, where you've got Freedom Camping facilities, are there any negative impacts on the environment? And you do hear about them down south, and I just wouldn't like something to be put in place without a way of preventing negative environmental impacts if they're misused.
Good on Mate Mauna Piki here. Just following on from Councillor Nees's question, I suppose. At the outset, when we started seeing Freedom Campers at Pareirau or the trout pools at the top end of the river, Nick would be able to support this. We didn't have the facilities in place to support that level of influx, and because it happened almost overnight, they had, I guess, one toilet amongst dozens of people, and because I'm also the chairperson of the farm that's right there as well, we got to see all the excrement and the loo paper and the waste that used to be left behind. So I think there needs to be a staged process to ensure that our facilities and our support mechanisms are in place before we agree to anything like that. But I guess coming back to an earlier comment is that this certainly isn't the forum that can say yay or nay. I suppose we'll be in the process to support or give comment if that is an option to provide a space for Freedom Campers at the end of the river. Thank you.
Thank you, Piki.
So I think that we did a bit of research out at Lake, and one of the things is Freedom Campers said they didn't mind doing was paying a small fee, whether that's $2, $5 a vehicle, if they were going to get a few things like like toilets and that sort of stuff. They were more than happy to do that. So I think rather than a Freedom Camping, it's kind of overnight camping managed a little bit more. And then I think the locals then get behind it a little bit more when they go, okay, these guys coming down and camping for minimal charge, but we're actually, our environments and things getting money back to support it. So I think that generally when we sort of canvassed it with the Freedom Campers, they were more than happy to put a small nominal fee in as long as it wasn't over the top. I'm talking $5 a vehicle, which makes it over a summer makes a really significant difference.
Any other questions or statements from our members? Okay, I think that has brought our meeting to a close.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you all the presenters. I just had a voice then.
That was me, Amanda again. Can I have a
Amanda.
mover and seconder to receive Tim's report, please?
Sorry, yes, absolutely.
I'll
Let's start with the
move.
mover. Let's start with the mover.
Picky.
Picky, thank you, Picky. And a seconder?
Grant.
Grant.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you, everybody, for your participation this morning. Felt a wee bit laboured, probably because, it felt we had a few teething problems with our Zooming, but we made it, and that's great for all of us. So thank you, everybody, and I'm going to hand the rako back to Dean to do our closing karakia.
Before that, thank you, Mate Moana, for chairing the meeting. Fantastic. I think we got through anyway. So, and I think there was some really good talk and points raised today. This is the first time I've had more than like 15 people in a Zoom or whatever, and so it was quite interesting to see how that operated, where people can come in and out. But e piki, ka huri te rākau ki a koe, ke te kapi kia mātou hui e hau.
Tēnā koe, koe no, me no i tātou. E te atua ka harawa ko tēnei mātou pununga i koropiko nei mui tō aroaro. E tuku whakamoi miti atu ki a koe i hoa mau nei manakitanga kirimi a tātou i tēnei rā. Anā ki tia pai wā tātou nei whānau i a rātou e noho ana ki o rātou ake kāinga. E ino i tēnei nā mātou o pununga mo ake tonu atu. Āmeni.
Āmeni.
Kia ora tātou.
Thank you,
Kia ora,
everybody.
Mate Moana.
Have a great day.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
That was good.
Yeah, it was a long one, but it was a good one.